All right, welcome back to Oregon Live at the Voice of College Football. It's 5 o'clock. We're back here in Eugene, ready to break down what really is, John, one of the great Oregon Duck wins, certainly in Dan Lanning's tenure, but just kind of in the history of Oregon. You go into the whiteout in Penn State and take down the Nittany Lions 30-24 in double overtime. Dylan Thieneman gets it, seals the game with a interception. It really elevates fantastic play, and we'll get into it. Let's just start with this. You've had a couple days to sit with it. What is this game? How much does it matter? Where does it, rank amongst games you've watched, against games in Oregon's history? What's it going to be? How important is this game going to be down the road?
Yeah, what stands out to me is kind of what you said there. It's defining for Lanning's time here at Oregon so far. You kind of look at his tenure with the Ducks over these last 4 years here. You're now here in year 4. And the win last year over Ohio State was yes, I am here and I'm here to contend for a national championship. We had been kind of in that position previously, the year before, had a great season, but couldn't get over the hump against UW. And then last year, that game against Ohio State was kind of the announcement of, Ohio State coming into Autzen and Autzen kind of turning them back, and Oregon turning them back and pulling off a big win. But this one, to go on the road, go into, one of 110,000 people at Beaver Stadium in a hectic environment in the whiteout, just, about as noisy and as loud and crazy as you can get. And to go come out of there with a win, and a win where, it wasn't like a fluky win either. I mean, you come out with this win in overtime, but Oregon played strong on both sides of the ball. They matched the physicality from Penn State. They matched the speed from Penn State, and they looked like they belonged on the field and looked like the better team on Saturday night. At least for the first 3 quarters of that game, until things got close again late. But defining win of Dan Lanning's term so far, of his tenure so far. Just to go in and get that kind of win on the road is really impressive stuff. And, that's traveling across the country to a traditional Big Ten power. That's saying, once again, Oregon is here and not to be messed with by these other Big Ten teams.
Yeah. I mean, and what I come back to is you can look at a 6-point first half combined, but it really feels like the Ducks did everything they understood and then did everything that they needed to do in this game. They stopped the run. They forced Drew Allen into mistakes. They were able to run through their running back room and not let Noah Whittington take all the reps and get tired by what's a really good defensive line. They were able to, play around a guy like Danny Janine Sutton, who can wreck a game. And Dante Moore, Dan Lanning said he looks like the best quarterback in college football.
Yeah, I mean, I have it on the sheet here also, but we can talk about it a little bit right now. But after this weekend, Dante Moore has climbed to the top guy in the Heisman odds right now, basically across the board, it seems. People are really coming around on Dante Moore as not only a candidate for the Heisman Trophy, but as potentially a quarterback, a first-round guy, one of the QB1 candidates for, either this upcoming draft or the 2027 draft class, depending on, how long he does decide to stick in school. But Dante Moore has looked phenomenal so far. What do you think about, Dan Lanning's comments after that game saying that he does think Dante is the best quarterback in college football? Because so far through these first couple of weeks, it's looked like, and it seems like the national consensus is kind of starting to fall into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Heisman is built on a couple of things. It's built on, being one of the best players in the country, and then also, having a great story. And I think Dante Moore has both of those things. He's, he really did perform at Penn State. That's one of the most difficult places to play in the country, and he looked ice cold. He was able. I was really impressed by his ability to look and then pull it down. There's a ton of times where he pulled it down and scrambled, and we can work on the sliding because he got knocked a couple times. But his ability to go through his progressions and understand when it's not there, and not to force something, which is what Aller does sometimes. That was honestly the difference in this game. Aller is also a great scrambler, but will sometimes try throws that aren't there. He hits Aaron Flowers right in the hands on a play where maybe Dante Moore pulls that down. But you talk about and part of it is oh, does he have a Heisman moment? I don't know that he's got that yet. Some of these Penn State throws were great.
I was about to say that throw.
I'd say
Ryan in overtime so far.
That could be your Heisman moment. I feel like you'd probably want something else, and that comes down the stretch. Bose, like you could say, was that throw against Oregon State.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan probably the run against Ohio State.
State.
But this guy has such a great story.
Mm-hmm.
People want him to rise to be the best player in college football because, you know, not that he was written off, but like people were like, hey, like I don't think he's the 5-star prospect that was once committed to Oregon and then came into UCLA, was able to be a starter. Yes, that puts him as the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. There's so much more college football to play, and John Mateer now is out for at least a few games. And there are other guys around the league. Florida State lost Tommy Castellanos. I don't know where he sits. I think he's got the best combination of ability and voter appeal via story.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying with the storyline stuff there. Just because it is something that you don't really see that much in college football, where a guy does make a really mature decision to say, hey, I kind of did jump into this too early and I wasn't ready for it at UCLA. You know, took a step back, sat behind Dylan Gabriel, you know, and was able to learn the offense. And you've just seen it. And throughout the early parts of the season, you saw it at Penn State, how comfortable he is in the offense. And that's, you know, that's that development that he got last year. And that he got, you know, all that extra time that he got to learn from a really experienced guy in Gabriel, but then just work in Stein's system, talk to Coach Stein all the time, working through different things. And then the poise is the other thing that really, really stood out from that Penn State game. And that's the thing that I've seen people kind of the talk about Dante Moore after that game is how poised he was in that game, facing the moment, facing big moments throughout the game, you know, with pressure in his face, being able to escape out, hit receivers downfield. The play to DeCorian Moore that helped set up Jordan Davison's touchdown later on that drive was just absolutely phenomenal. The one to Kenyon Sadiq was phenomenal. There's a couple of the scrambles to, you know, pick up first downs. He did not have any fear at any moment. And then, you know, like I said, the play to Gary Bryant at the end of that game, he's got denied Dennis Sutton right in his face, coming off the edge as a free rusher, and he just gets right around him, no fear from Dante at all, and hits his receiver over the middle and lets him get in for a touchdown. A really impressive performance for, you know, you don't want to call him a kid because he does have, you know, he's in his third year in college football now. He's got that starting experience from his freshman year, but, you know, this is his first season really going into as the guy, the starter.
Man, he's 20 years old. Exactly. As a career 20-year-old, that is impressive.
Handle that environment, some of the situations he was in, not press, you know, take everything that defense was giving him. They threw a lot of stuff to the outside to utilize the screen game as an extension of the running game on the outside and use those guys like De'Aaron Hill, his speed and stuff like that. And Dante just operated really cleanly the whole time. So I was super impressed by that. You know, you come out of that stat line, it's 248 and 3 touchdowns. No picks, like 248. It's not like he threw for 400 yards or anything, but no one was going to go into the Penn State whiteout and throw for 200 or for 400 yards. 248, 3 touchdowns, no picks, just a really clean game. That's what you're looking for for your quarterback in an environment like that, and Dante Moore absolutely delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. Very impressive. I'll get into it. He's in my exclamation points and question marks, so I'll say.
Yeah, we have more stuff coming on Dante Moore. Don't worry. Before we do get into our exclamation points and question marks, things we're excited about and still concerned about through week 5, I do want to ask you, Oregon climbs to number 2 in the latest AP poll, only behind Ohio State. They jump ahead of Miami. Penn State drops to number 7. Indiana, Oregon's next opponent, up to number 8. Well, where are you thinking after this latest poll? You think the Ducks ranking is fair at number 2? And how do you feel like your expectations have kind of changed compared to where the national expectations have been at after this Penn State game?
Yeah, I have the Ducks at 2 as well. That's where you know, that's where I think they should be. We had a little conversation after the game about whether they could rise to number 1, and I think it's, you know, they were closer to rising to number 1 than you know, falling down into that 4 or 5 range, and only jumping like 1 or 2 spots after the win. But you know, you can't unseat Ohio State, who really, you know, overcame a tough start to that game to play well in a really difficult place to play. And also, it doesn't matter, you know, whoever. It's looking like the winner of the Big Ten will be the number 1 seed, but we'll see. Winner of the Big Ten or the SEC goes number 1. As cool as it would be, it's not worth it right now. I thought a little bit about why Penn State fell so far. Because, on the surface, it feels like going all the way down to number 7 from number 3 is really tough for a team that lost in double overtime and came back and did what it did. But, we go back to the advantages that Penn State had in this game. You're coming off a bye. You're playing at home in a phenomenal home environment. You have, probably the more experienced team. You have guys like Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, and Denai Dennis Sutton, who are all, third, fourth year players. Drew Haller. And number one, to get outperformed on the stat sheet, especially in the first half, as much as they did is really frustrating. And to fail to take advantage of those things, to fail to take advantage of Denai Dennis Sutton and to have Oregon play such great run defense that you can't, I think, what was it, the first drive in the second half, they were like a couple yards away from doubling their first half total just on that drive.
Yeah.
7 seems low for me, but I understand why they fell that far, because even though this was a close game and you value coming back in it, this team had all, the cards in its favor except, failed to take advantage.
Yeah, people were saying this was the game that was set up for, this is the one that was set up for Penn State to finally win the big game, because it was Oregon going in there and not Ohio State or Michigan. It was a newer Big Ten powerhouse team. Penn State was the favorite this time. They were at home at the whiteout, still couldn't get it done. Not to take anything away from Oregon and what Dan Lanning did, but we've seen the questions of James Franklin and his ability in big games before. So those continue to linger. And with where they're at in the rankings now, there was just a lot of shakeup in general, I think, because you do have Georgia goes down, LSU goes down. They dropped them all the way down to number 12 and number 13. So there's just a lot of shakeup. Some new teams got their first loss. They bumped some of those still undefeated teams up a bit. So there's still things moving around, but looking like we're going to have another, we are, because Indiana's also on bye this week, but it's going to be another undefeated top 10 matchup of Big Ten teams at Autzen Stadium in a couple of weeks. So that's very exciting to look forward to.
It's great. I got that in my question marks too. So we'll do you want to get into that?
Yeah, we can get into that right now. Weekly segment we do after every game, going over 2 things that excited us and one thing we still have a question about after that's last week. Week 5, Ducks come out with a big win, but Owen, excited to hear, what was the first thing that you were excited about after this game?
These freshman running backs, man. These guys, especially De'Aaron Hill. I got my box score.
They delivered on your the Daily Emerald the cover story there.
Makes me feel happy inside. De'Aaron Hill goes 10 for 85. 85 gain, net 82 yards, long of 24. That was twice. And Jordan Davison looks like a phenomenal blocker. He punches it in, like we talked about on that drive. These guys are, I've got some quotes up on my wall here. They're years beyond their time. They're Jaden Lamar after Northwestern. So there's no drop off with these young guys. Dan Lanning says when there's a lot of young talent, you have to understand where you put those reps. Whittington's talking. This is him talking about Davison. No one's stopping him for 1 yard, 2 yard, 3 yard. He goes all the way up to 7. These guys are so phenomenal. And in a game where there weren't a lot of explosive plays, you need explosive players. De'Aaron Hill is that explosive, man. I've seen people talking about whether he's the RB1. I'm curious. We can have that discussion, but I think, number one, these guys are phenomenal on their own. And number 2, Penn State is the peak of having 2 running backs. These guys complement each other so well.
Yeah, like you said, with Penn State, you go into this game and the storyline going into it is what we talked about all week, which what a lot of people asked Dan Lanning about during, media last week. How are you going to stop Katron Allen and Nick Singleton? Because those guys each went for over 100 yards. It was close to 300 on the ground from the team in total in that Big Ten championship game last year. And Oregon goes out there and they have 2 freshman running backs who outplay those guys who are the,
it's not
talked
close.
About as one of the, up there with Notre Dame as like the best running back duos in the country. And Oregon has 2 true freshmen. And, the Ducks went to, I think it was their highest rate of 21 personnel this season. They did a bunch of stuff with Hill, with Davison in there. Davison as a blocker a bunch where he has been really, really good in that physicality and that size. And like you said, Hill just kind of brings that extra, he has that juice, man. That the same thing that Noah Whitting can do for this team when he's healthy. But
And
when
he's
we
like
saw it
210 pounds, right? Like this
exactly,
is a relatively big dude. This is
yeah,
not,
I think he's
you know,
listed.
190 pounds.
I think he was listed like 200 or 205. He was like 180, 190 in high school, and he's put on a little bit since then. But he was really able to open this game up once he started gashing, especially in the second half. Those touchdown drives are set up because he hits a 24-yarder, then he's going for 9, 10 on a couple of those carries. Really impressed by the two of those guys. And with the RB1 discussions with Hill, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him get the most touches in this offense at this point, but I think it should absolutely remain a rotation because that's, what really makes this running back room so deadly together is when you do have the mix and the rotation and these different looks that you can go to and bring in a Jordan Davison for short yardage or for blocking, and Jane Lamar, same thing. So I wouldn't mind seeing Hill get the most touches going forward, but it doesn't mean I want to see him be the RB1 in terms of like first guy on the field for those snaps.
Yeah.
All right, going to first thing for me that had me excited from that game. I mean, talking about the way that this team shut down Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, what the defensive line was able to do to those guys, to this Penn State, not necessarily to those guys, but what they were able to do to the Penn State, especially the interior of that offensive line, some of the tackles as well. Bear Alexander, Amari Washington, Mateo Uyunglele, Tatum 280, all of those guys. I was going through the tape for the defense this morning. I mean, we've seen a lot of people talk about what Bear Alexander did in that game as his coming out party. He hasn't been starting all season. He hasn't gotten those snaps necessarily all year, but it's been on tape. He's eating these double teams. He's playing really good against the run. It's why they got him in there next to Amari Washington right now, and he had a phenomenal game on Saturday. 5 tackles for him, gets a tackle for loss. He's just in the backfield throughout the tape all over that one. Same with Mateo Uyunglele. And to hold, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, these guys come into the game, averaged over 6 yards per carry. They hold them down around 3. And until that fourth quarter, when Penn State did finally get things going, 47 rushing yards on 21 carries the first 3 quarters, 2 yards per carry for a team in Penn State who that's, what their offense is based on. They run the ball and then work, with all their misdirection and stuff with Aller off of that. But it completely shut down this offense, and it really started with the defensive line. And after a couple of weeks ago, they struggled against Northwestern. Not struggled, but didn't play to the level that, we know that these guys can be at. And they lived up to that against Penn State. I was really, really impressed.
Yeah, again, it's in-season growth. We talked about the fact, hey, this wide receiver room is really impressive because, they've grown, and there are guys who have taken steps, not only in the offseason when you're just working and nobody can see, but they take steps in games. In season, this defensive line. Bear Alexander is more proof of concept. That guys can come here and he's a guy who is a fantastic player, but maybe hasn't found his rhythm yet, and he finds it at Oregon. This was our big point. Ducks had to stop the run in order to win this game, and they did. It didn't really start working for Penn State until they stopped going just between the tackles and started trying to get guys on linebackers outside and going with sweeps to Pena. So impressed. They really stood up.
Definitely. All right, where are we going with this next thing that's got you excited on?
Coming back to Dante Moore. He is for real. We knew he was for real through 4 weeks because this guy put some unbelievable throws on tape. Because he led these 2-minute drill situations and these 4-minute drill situations. And we said, hey, I think he's the real deal. He can run this offense. He's the point guard. Now he's for real. He goes into Penn State and does all the same. He gets the opportunity to lead a 2-minute drive, and if not for that holding penalty, it's moving. It's happening. We'll go back to the point. We've already talked about it, so I won't spend too much time on it. But he's his poise. This was, I feel like this was the last thing you need to see from him to say this guy is a draft ready quarterback. He's grown since UCLA. He learned everything he could from Dylan Gabriel and Will Stein, and all these guys. And this is a dude, man.
Definitely. I mean, back to what I just said, 10 minutes ago or so about Dante, but just incredible poise throughout that game, operating the offense really well. And then, like you said, to go into that environment, it was, the Dante Moore had been through the first couple of weeks of the season looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but because Oregon hadn't really played anybody to that level yet, people still weren't ready to kind of elevate him into those conversations. And after that game, he's clearly there. Dan Lanning like we said, Dan Lanning said he's the best quarterback in the country. The Heisman odds are showing it as well. Dante Moore, like you said, for real. He is the a very big, he's the heart of this team. I mean, it's the quarterback, but this team does not go in there and win this game against Penn State if Dante Moore doesn't play at the level that he does and outplay Drew Aller in that game. And then that's really what things came down to, because Dante Moore doesn't make a mistake and Drew Aller does, and that's what cost Penn State the game in the end.
Yeah, and people, we can talk all we want about whether Drew Aller is like, if he's one of those guys who you want to take for your NFL team. He is a good college football quarterback. This is not an easy guy to outplay. He's playing somewhere where he's very comfortable with a team he knows very well. Don't take anything away from Dante Moore for outplaying Drew Aller.
Definitely. All right. So my next thing I'm excited about, going back to the defense, but backside of the defense, the secondary absolutely shut down throughout this game. Drew Aller finishes it 137 pass yards and a pick. Does have 2 touchdowns, but Penn State's wide receivers just really could not get anything going until Devontae Ross picks up most of those yards on that big touchdown play from Drew Aller, then catches another touchdown on a sick little shovel pass designed by Andy Kotelnicki for that second touchdown. But overall, Penn State's receivers combined 10 targets, 6 catches, 64 yards. Oregon's secondary, just phenomenal work throughout that game. Dylan Thieneman was a monster. We saw it on the pick. And the cornerbacks have been, they haven't really gotten the discussion because they haven't been targeted that much, because, Oregon's done so well in the run. You have people haven't been talking about them because you don't see them on TV because no one throws it in their direction. But if Brandon Finney gets targeted one time through that game, comeback route, he's playing man coverage on it, he's all over it the entire time. If Obadegu doesn't get targeted a single time. And for those two guys, you got a true freshman and a redshirt freshman who was hurt for most of last year. This season, through 5 games, they've been targeted 15 times, 6 catches, 77 yards. That's it. It's a completion percentage below 50%. They're quick to the ball afterwards. The secondary is really, really good and is becoming one of the, for a group that we'll get into it later this episode. We're gonna go back to revisit our position group draft from before the season, kind of redraft those a month later after we've seen some of those football. But we look back then and both of us were the cornerbacks were the last position group I took, because this is a young group. We weren't sure what was going to happen, and they've been really, really good this season. Theron Johnson played really, really good in that game too. They did rotate him and Sione Laulea in there as well. Laulea, I'd say, had the weakest game out of all of them. Had a couple times where he did get beat, was grabbing or anything, like some things like that. But overall, still really solid. But yeah, Finney, Obadegu, Theron Johnson. When you combine that with what Thieneman does as a safety, Aaron Flowers has been really, really good playing the run. Secondary huge in that game. So very excited with the direction that this group is heading, and especially when if Obadegu and Brandon Finney are going to be back next year.
Yeah, and it just goes back to how mature these freshmen are, how strong they were. And I asked Dylan Thieneman about this last week during midweek press conferences, and I didn't get the question in post game. I was curious what he would have said. We just asked about like what it takes to connect these two teams, and we talked about this a little bit post game, but I wanted to bring it back up here. I'm so impressed by the way these guys have been able to find a rhythm together and work together. We've only seen a couple of coverage busts in the Oregon State game once, and then something that happened, I think, with Taco Dowler in Montana State. It feels like their communication keeps growing, and that's not an easy thing to do when, especially, you're young, but also these are guys who haven't played together. It's that for me is the most impressive thing.
And that, especially when that was the thing that's what hurt this team last year in the college football playoff, in the Big Ten championship game where Aller was able to hit some touchdowns. It was miscommunication on the backside of that secondary. And when Penn State, I didn't get through all of it. I'm like partway into the fourth quarter. I had to go to class earlier, so I didn't get through all of the defensive tape. But from what I was charting, Penn State had a motion shift something on almost every play, and if they weren't, they were going tempo, because they want to keep things confused. And Dan talked about how last year they had a lot of times where, again, in that Big Ten championship game, the defensive line didn't have their hand in the dirt yet. They were still talking on the back end, trying to get things ready. And that was, there were a few times where that happened still, because Penn State was trying to play fast, trying to cause confusion, but Oregon handled it so much better this time. And as I've been saying all season, I think Dylan Thienemann's communication in the secondary has been so huge for this group, especially when you do have as many young guys around him as you do.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
where does the question still lie for you after this game? What are you still feeling unsure about after week 5 here?
Okay. Oh, I'm going in a little bit of a different direction. I want to ask: is this bye week in a good spot for the Ducks, or will it really derail some momentum? Because we talked about how late the Ducks bye week was last season, and it meant that they do go undefeated, but they're getting beat up, and that matters when you have guys out in the postseason. Do you feel like this bye week is in a good spot for the Ducks? Is it a spot where you say, hey, it's a big win, let's reset? Let's look at this Indiana game because it is a big game. Or would you rather not? This is interesting, but either have another conference game that are saying let's play Indiana right away, like roll off that momentum and look straight at it and have your bye week somewhere else.
I definitely see where you're coming from in terms of derailing momentum, because you do feel like the momentum was so high and in such a good spot after that Penn State game. But overall, I mean, we were saying it before the season when we were looking at the schedule. We saw that bye and said, hey, that's a really good spot to have a bye, because you have this build up, the early part of the season, you play that weaker schedule, then you have the game on the road at Penn State, and then to not only learn from that. We were at the time thinking, hey, that's going to be a good game. That could be one they lose. So you learn from those mistakes. Oregon doesn't really have many of those mistakes, but still, there's going to be stuff they're learning from. But just the rest and recovery time, that was a physical football game. You played extra of it too. You played overtime. Whittington needs time to just, he's been banged up. Justice Lowe's been banged up. All these guys. I think this is going to be really good for them, because it's been a push through this first month of the season to get to that Penn State game. And now you're there, reset, rest this week, get everybody's bodies right, because you do have a big game coming up. But at the same time, don't let that Indiana game slip by you, because you're resting on the laurels of such a big win on the road at Penn State. Indiana, I mean, they're a top 10 team in the country for a reason. They are looking like one of the more dangerous teams in the Big Ten, besides that Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, trio at the top. So you got to stay ready for them and be on your toes these next couple of weeks. And this gives you plenty of time to prep for a team that is going to bring a lot at you, especially on offense, with what Kirk Cinetti does and Fernando Mendoza this season at quarterback.
Yeah, and I want to throw Indiana's on bye this week too, so this is a good spot, because a lot of teams that Oregon plays are coming off bye this season. It looks a lot like Washington's schedule last year, and this is the one that you'd want to be the most rested for out of those games, and you get a chance to be equally rested instead of having to play a team that's coming off a bye in a big game.
Absolutely. The Ducks have a lot of schedule disadvantages and rest disadvantages. So this is a good spot to even that out against a team like Indiana. For me, the question is how did Penn State get back into this game? Because after Oregon does go up 17-3 with Jordan Davison's touchdown, about 12-13 minutes left in that one, it felt to me like this one was heading towards, wow, this is a statement for Oregon. But all of a sudden, 4 plays, Penn State quickly scores a touchdown under 2 minutes, and they get it back after not a 3-and-out, but Oregon gets 1 first down and then punts it away. And it's a bad punt, like only a 30-yard punt by James Ferguson Reynolds that goes out of bounds around the 40. And then Penn State puts together a 6.5-minute touchdown drive. It goes 15 plays, where they're just converting, and that's what really killed Oregon down the stretch. And the defense, you could just see how tired they were by the end of that, because a drive starts off, Penn State gets into a 3rd and 9, Aller scrambles for 20 yards, then they get into a 4th and 1, Singleton converts it, then they get into another 4th and 1, at this time Aller keys it and converts it himself. So then another 3rd and 1, they go to the same jet power read that they were doing all night with Aller converts it again, and then they set up the touchdown eventually to Devontae Ross. But that drive was really killer, almost backbreaking for the Ducks. And after that point, it felt like the momentum was starting to slip away, especially as we headed towards overtime. So I was concerned at that point, but then at the same time, really impressed by the way this team was able to rally, recover, not let, how tiring that drive was, kind of get them down and still be able to get out and go during overtime. So Penn State does get back into this game. As I was looking at it, that's really the thing that did come away as the biggest concern for me, because Oregon did play so strong throughout this entire game. So that would be the one thing for me, just letting them back into this one. But Penn State's a really good football team. It's hard to keep them out of these games at the end of the day, and especially when you're only have 17 points. So
yeah,
Oregon did a good job resetting after that, though. So
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these two drives, and that they have different concerns to me that this drive that's basically just 4 explosives pretty much.
Yeah.
We talked about how successful the secondary was, especially when they're in so much hurry up and there's so much motion. That's where the kind of started to fall apart a little bit. And they're able to recover, but that's interesting to see that that does happen. And this other drive, this long drive, the rushes are 1 yard, then 20, 8, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 2, 2, 3, before the touchdown pass. They start being able to. They start being able to go short yardage.
Fourth downs, exactly. Yeah.
They were relying on these, on Katron Allen's ability to break a big run, but suddenly it's hey, we can get into second and short, we can get into third and short, and be able to open up options. Suddenly it's not 3rd and 9 every play, and Drew Aller makes a great play on 3rd and 9, but Penn State finally put itself in a situation to succeed, and part of that's Oregon not being able to stop the run short.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I think we're going to take it to a break here. Unless you got anything else, John, we'll be right back. After a quick break, we will be while we're drafting more position groups. I'm excited. I know who's going number 1.
Oh, yeah. College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
All right, welcome back to Oregon Live at the Voice of College Football. We're breaking down that Penn State game and heading to this bye week. We're going to bring back a segment that we did on our second show this summer. We're going to draft some of Oregon's position groups, pick out who's the best, who maybe doesn't get drafted, because there will be one. But first, John, before we start this, I want to ask, when you look at the group that you drafted, are you happy with that? Or do you feel pretty good about that group? Is there anybody you'd rather have?
Not
your draft strategy.
Can't say I'm exactly thrilled. I went back and watched our little segment that we did. So just to recap, Owen took the defensive line with the first overall pick, and then I went with the running backs based largely around the fact that I talked a lot about how much I trusted Mekhi Hughes to be that RB1 in this group. Didn't travel last weekend, so we'll see how that goes. But some of these other picks, I took the tight ends. I think that's a group I really, really like. Just to recap last time, Owen went defensive line. I went with the running backs. Then Owen went to the offensive line. I went with the linebackers. Owen went back to the safeties with Dylan Thieneman. I took the tight ends and Kenyon Sadiq. Then he grabbed Dante Moore in the quarterbacks, and I took the cornerback room, leaving the receivers undrafted. So you just took two groups on offense, 2 groups on defense. And we're going to run it back here because now, this was a lot of projection in August, a lot of I took the cornerbacks and talked the whole time about Theron Johnson and Jaleel Florence, and not that much about Ife Obadegwu. Or definitely not about Brandon Finney and how good he has been this season. So now that we have a month's worth of results on the field this season, you figured this is a good break point here at the bye week. Kind of go back to this and see how our thoughts have changed on some of these groups, on some of the talent pool that this Oregon team has, after a month of results on the field. So we'll go ahead and get into it here.
We're gonna let you pick first because I picked first last time.
Okay, so if I got the first pick this time, last time Owen went with defensive line. I think the running backs are my first pick, but I'm actually gonna go sneaky little move here. Owen's the last pick last time. He snagged Dante Moore in the quarterbacks. This was a time where we were talking about a position battle between Dante Moore and Austin Novosad. It wasn't really something that was really happening, but out of the program at the time, they were that was the word that, these guys, they weren't announcing a starter. This was a competition. Dante Moore is he's the Heisman favorite for a reason at this point. He looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. It's quarterback. It's hard not to take that with the first overall pick here. He has been so phenomenal for this team, setting up everything on this offense and turning into one of the most, explosive units in the country with some of the stuff he can do attacking downfield, but so just efficient in terms of the way he moves the ball. And so I got to go with Dante Moore in this quarterback room because even after that, Austin Novosad, we do think is a solid backup quarterback. And you said it in the last time we did this, but Luke Boga's legs, they still are there. They still stand out. So we'll go.
This is my first pick. Of course, Dante Moore is a great player, but I think it really elevates to first overall when you look at how deep that room is. Quarterbacks, you're drafting the first guy. You're taking Dante Moore here, but that's a bonus for you.
Absolutely.
I was wondering if these were going to go first overall. You took them first overall last time. I'm going to go with the running backs. I think this is the deepest position group on the team. I think it's also got the highest ceiling, probably the highest floor. I think. Yeah, most explosive. You've got a ton of variety in terms of what you can do with these guys. There are guys that you trust to get goal line carries. Jordan Davison, Noah Whittington, guys who look like all around guys. Jaden Lamar looks really strong. Explosive players. Dr. Hill is a gadget. He can line up at wide receiver. He can take screen plays like we saw him take for the touchdown against Penn State. Dante Moore is probably better individually. He's probably more valuable than any one of these players, but that's only because there's so many of them. And Oregon honestly would be the force it is with any of them at running back.
Yeah, you just look at top to bottom depth at this position. It's not necessarily that it's a different argument than the one I made for this group in August of Mekhi Hughes at the top of this room leading it. It's a group where you got 7 guys who have literally all 7 guys have touches this season, have seen playing time this season. Dewan Riggs and Mekhi Hughes and Jay Harris more later in games, but you got a legit 4 or 5 man rotation here at the top of this running back room. All guys who provide you different things, different versatile looks. Like you said, Jordan Davison can do his power thing, Dr. Hill with the speed, Jalen Lamar as a blocker, Noah Whittington's explosive. You got all sorts of stuff with this running back room, and it's a versatile group, a lot of depth in it. I like this pick here for you.
Thanks.
All right, so back to me. I got to go back to where Owen started this thing back in August. Back to the defensive line for my next pick. If I'm looking on the defensive side of the ball at a group, that's the one instantly that stands out. That's why I talked about them as my first thing. My first exclamation point from this Penn State game. What Tatum Tuioti and Mateo Uiagalelei have done off the edge this year, really impressive. And the basis for taking them first with the first pick in August was because you have returning production in those 2 guys off the edge who both started for this team as sophomores. And so far they've taken their games to another level. And they're, as you'd expect as juniors, Mateo's playing even better against the run. Tatum continues to be a strong run defender, but is developing as a pass rusher even more with that bull rush. And then on the inside, Amari Washington, we knew was going to be a beast. We saw the numbers on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list over the summer, but it's been inconsistent at times this season, but it's flashed. It has really flashed, really flashed at times, just how explosive and how much of a difference maker and a playmaker he can be from on the interior of the defensive line. And then Bear Alexander really stepped up this year over the last couple of weeks. And then even the depth that you have behind these guys. Tion Gray has really improved, I felt, since he kind of took a back step to Bear Alexander. Playing in a little bit smaller role, less snap count, but I felt his play on the field when he is out there has been a lot better recently. Tion Gray, and then even Aiden Breland coming in on these sub packages as a pass rusher. Just crazy depth on this defensive line, and one of the best units on this team, but one of the best defensive line units in the country, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the stuff that we said about this group stands up. A lot of stuff we said back in that second show stands. But again, like all these groups that we're taking to the top have bonuses. And the bonus, like you said, for this defensive line is that guys have stepped up. We talked about how important it is for these guys to work together and how important it is for guys to win off Amari Washington and off Mateo. I think that's happened. And that's what, elevates you from elite. And you can say, hey, this is a defensive line that has 1-star guy who can really go win. And you can get him to go win, maybe against a double team, maybe one-on-one with a really great left tackle. That's not what teams are concerned about. Yes, they're concerned about Mateo, but they're concerned about double teaming Mateo because there are so many other fantastic guys on this team that work so well off of him. I think that's a good spot to go.
All right, back to you, Owen. Where you went with the running backs with your first pick. Where are we going? You got one more offensive group, and then you got two on the defense.
I'm struggling here, man, because there's a bunch that I'm bouncing between. And it's really a testament to how strong this team is, and because I feel like there are 4 or 5 groups that I could really take with this second spot. I'm gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go strategically because there's other position groups I want to draft. I'm gonna take the corners.
Okay.
I think I'm taking them not only because they've been shut down but because I've been so impressed by their growth so quickly. I'm investing. I believe these guys are going to be really good. Oregon has them for 3 more years. Most of these guys. I'm impressed. I'm taking them because I think as good as they are now, that they might not be more talented than the offensive line or some of these linebackers or tight ends. But I think that I'm taking because they're good. They're going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are going to be back next year, and they're going to be even better. So I'm very excited about where this cornerback room is at. We talked about it before the season, just the types of athletes that were brought into this team. You got big, long, fast guys on the outside, and it showed up this season in the way that these guys were able to cover. They've been able to do more things with their coverages. In terms of going to zone a little bit more because they got guys with good instincts. And then you got guys that you could tell on Saturday that they were not scared of Penn State's receivers because they were, every time it was 3rd and long, press man on the outside, and Oregon's cornerbacks are winning most of the time. So for my next pick, I got quarterbacks with my first pick, defensive line with my second pick. We're going to go back to the offensive side of the ball. And actually my third pick from last time, same group here. We're going to go with the tight ends because I took them last time based on what Kenyon Sadiq is as kind of like the number 1 guy in this room. Because similar to where I was thinking with Mekhi Hughes and the running backs is, it's the position group where most of the time you got one guy in the field, and if that guy is a big impact guy, that makes more of a difference. But we've seen this season Oregon run a ton of 12 personnel, 13 personnel, all sorts of looks with the tight ends, and Kenyon Sadiq has been a huge part of that because you can put him out a receiver, you can put him in the slot, you can put him in line, and you can put him in the backfield even. And teams never know what kind of formation you're going to get into, what kind of look you're going to get into when you're in the huddle, when they see your personnel, because you have no idea where Sadiq's going to line up because he can do all these things. But at the same time, Jamari Johnson's been awesome for this team this year, and I don't think that's gotten enough attention, just how much of a difference maker he's been as a blocker. He's been kind of that inline tight end on the line more than Sadiq, but it's because he's big. He's like 6'6", 250, 255, and it showed up on tape. And it showed up on, even on plays where he has gotten the ball in his hands, like that shovel pass from Dante Moore for the touchdown in overtime, where nothing is really there. Dave Iuli's block kind of gets blown up when he's trying to pull, but Johnson kind of spins and just uses his big body, keeps fighting his way into the end zone for that touchdown. So really, really impressive. And as a blocker, what he's done, especially we've seen the highlights of Sadiq, but Johnson has had some highlights just like that as well. So I really like these tight ends. I think Roger Saliapaga will continue to get on the field more, throughout this season. Zach Grace, even though me and Eric Scopel, my coworker at Duck Territory, have been asking for Zach Grace to get listed as a fullback on the roster because we know he's actually a fullback. But if we're going to call him a tight end, I'll take him in this group too as well. So I really like what the tight ends do for this team because they give so much versatility to this offense, especially Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the big thing to look at with these tight ends is that they're you look at these top 2 or 3 guys and you can't really understand what they're going to be on any given play because their skill set is so wide. Or Oregon gets athletes at tight end, not hey, this guy is a blocker, he's going to be a blocker. If he needs to get the ball in his hands, he can, but we're gonna avoid that if we can. I think Oregon feels really confident with these guys as blockers anywhere, downfield, inline, and also with the ball in their hands. They're all dangerous weapons anywhere on the field, whatever they're doing. So versatile. Same reason I like the running backs.
All right, back to you. You got the running backs and you got the cornerbacks. We are still looking at the receivers, the safeties, the offensive line, and is that the 3
the linebackers
have on the board? And the linebackers, yes. And you need one on each side of the ball right now.
Yeah. I really did want to take the wide receivers. I was thinking a lot about why they went undrafted last time, and we're like, hey, they're unproven, and I feel like they have really proven themselves. Jeremiah McClellan really looks fantastic. De'Gorian Moore is one of the best players on this team. He's one of the best freshmen in college football. But I want to take the offensive line, just because how well this group operated in Penn State when they're on the silent count the whole game. It's the right guard tapping the center. They're they don't allow a sack. They even when Dante Moore is moving around so much, he has the time in the pocket to make these plays. There are plays where some of the mistakes I thought he made was maybe he held it too long, and that's not something you get when you're playing a team like Penn State. It's not something you get when you go into an away stadium in the whiteout where your communication is very difficult. I've been, we talked about. I took him. Did I take him first overall? No, I took him second in the second round last time.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't let these guys go by because it's so impressive. They're a big part of why this running back group looks as fantastic as it does. And that Penn State game really cemented it for me.
Definitely, there were times some holdings on some tackles going on in that game against Penn State, but overall, I've really been impressed with the tackles throughout the season. Isaiah World and Alex Harkey have been both coming and been really solid as guys coming in as transfers. But the interior of this offensive line, especially that left side, if you had to look across the board, I think Dave Iuli is the weak point right now. Not necessarily anything against him, but when you're watching things, he is the guy that does miss blocks here and there. But what Emmanuel Pregnon at left guard has done for this team, what Iapani Ponchu Ulu has done at center for this team has just been absolutely phenomenal. The two of them, when they work combo blocks, it's just like unstoppable. Poncho is so good at giving that first help into the first guy, kind of pushing them like just kind of getting a shoulder into them, pushing them off a little bit to help Pregnon create that better angle, and then he climbs to the second level, walls off another defender. I love watching Iapani Ulu in the run blocking. He's so good. And then, like you said, working the silent count in that entire game. And Poncho's a guy that does a lot of these checks. He's IDing the Mike linebacker. He's seeing, hey, this safety is creeping down into the box, and he's pointing things out while he's getting ready to snap the ball. And Dave Iuli's talking to him the whole time. But what he's done solidifying things as a communicator when he was the guy that is coming back this year from last year's offensive line group. Really impressed by him. He talked about before the season, his plan was it's year 3 for him. He'll be draft eligible after this year, and it looks like he is going to be a guy that goes day 2, day 3 in this, or not day 3, but round 2, round 3 on day 2 in this draft, because he's going to be a very good center guard, whatever he is on the interior of the offensive line at the next level.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say about the holdings too, because there was a lot of talk about them from both sides, is that yes, you want them to play clean, but it shows an understanding of what they're going to call in this game, because you see an understanding very early that some of this isn't going to get called. It's how the refs are going to call it. They're saying, hey, is this going to be a physical game? We understand it. We're not going to nitpick. There's some ones that you say, hey, that definitely should have been called, but there's also an understanding, I want to say, and of what you can get away with in a game like this, and not just game to game, and that goes back to really being able to adapt in the middle of a matchup.
All right, so back to me. I got the quarterbacks and the tight ends on offense. I got the defensive line on defense. We got to take another defensive group here. It comes down to either the linebackers or the safeties. And for me, as impressive as Bryce Betcher, Jerry Mixon, and those guys have been, I mean, Dylan Thieneman made the play of the game on Saturday and continues to be one of just – he looks like an All-American out there. I mean, there are 2 All-American safety spots. So one of them will go to Caleb Downs, but Dylan Thieneman will be competing for that other one for sure, and will be looking like he'll be one of the top safeties off the board in the draft next year. They've used him so much. They used him a ton in that rover spot, playing kind of off the ball in that kind of Tampa 2 defense that they stole from Ohio State, that Caleb Downs was doing against them in the Rose Bowl. And that's because, Ohio State goes to that defense because they have a guy in Downs in the middle that they can trust and who can, play that role and do all the different things that's asked of him. And Oregon wasn't able to, they saw that look, and now they're able to introduce it and go to it because they have a guy in Thiedemann who they trust and can be that same guy. And then alongside him, Aaron Flowers has been really good all season against the run. he comes like these are the things I was saying all summer. Just he comes downhill really hard, and is really good, at being able to play the run from a high safety spot. I've been really impressed by that, and that's what I was saying all summer with him in the lead up to the season. I was like, I think you put him next to Thieneman, I think he could be that guy, that strong safety, where he can come downhill, because we saw it from him in the spring game. In the last couple of years, he's made tackles and been very impactful during those games. So, and then the other guy too, Jaden Kennedy. If we're going to include him with the safeties, we didn't necessarily mention him with the corner, so I'll take him with the safeties. I think it's more of I consider Oregon's star position to be more of a safety anyways than a corner, because Jaden Kennedy's asked to move all over the place. He played when Thieneman goes to the box or playing in the rover spot, then it's Kennedy up top playing a deep safety spot, and he can do that because he played corner and he played safety and he played all these positions at Tulane and at Ole Miss before he ended up at Oregon out of the transfer portal. So and the way he plays, for a guy at his size, he came in. He was listed at like 175 at Ole Miss. He said that he's put on about 10 pounds of muscle or so. He's listed at 185 now, and it shows up against the run. He's been super impactful against the run all season, and he was making plays out there against Penn State as well. Really, really like what he's provided for this team, just being able to go so many different looks on the backside of that defense.
Yeah, I agree. It's what's really like pulling the secondary together, because you got to have some guys to lead them. And there's been change. There's been, there is real competition. I think Aaron Flowers is the guy, but you've seen good stuff from Kingston Lopa, and the other guys, that are further down on the depth chart.
Yeah, Peyton Woodyard, they got him into the game on Saturday, and they went to late in that first half. They went to some dime stuff where they dropped Thieneman down to the box and then brought Woodyard in to be the field safety instead of Thieneman. So yeah, you just got and like you said, Lopa, Woodyard, Flowers. These guys are all redshirt freshmen. These guys are all, I think, Woodyard's technically a sophomore because he surpassed his limit last year. But these guys are all young, and when they're playing that well, when they're this young, very impressive stuff. Yeah.
So we have the linebackers left. I think I would rather have the wide receivers over them. I can't. I don't have another offensive spot open here.
Let's talk through these two positions.
So let's talk through it. The wide receivers we kind of talked about. I almost took them with my last pick. I think DeCorian Moore is unquestionably the best wide receiver on this team. He would have been up there last year. The level that this guy has come in at, because you're giving 5 stars. When he's 5 stars, you say, hey, this guy has a lot of potential. We believe that he can get to that level.
Yeah.
He's already at that level. There's not a question that this is a guy who is so just phenomenal and has such a great connection already with his quarterback, has such a great connection and understanding of what he has to do, against some great corners in Penn State, against, different looks and he's got great maturity, great physical control. That's unbelievable. And there's, you look at the rest of this room. Malik Benson is a step above what you thought he would be here. They've overcome the loss of Evan Stewart very well. I love what I've seen from Jeremiah McClellan. And that's why I was going with them over the linebackers, because you have seen guys step up in this linebacker room. Jerry Mixon, has made really big strides, and he's now the guy that you say he's the starter next to Bryce Betcher. When I look at in terms of impact, I feel like, I say this wide receiver room is good. I'm curious where you think the argument for the linebackers is.
Yeah, if I were to pick between these two groups, I think I'd go the receivers or the linebackers as well. Bryce Betcher's been good this year. I think he was a little bit. I think he was a little bit better last year. There's been plays at times where he's like out of position or things like that. There was one on Saturday where he met, I think it was Katron Allen right in the hole, like a yard behind the line of scrimmage, and still got bowled over for a first down. But overall, Bryce Betcher comes out of these games 10, 11, I think he had 12 tackles in that Penn State game. He's been really good. Jerry Mixon's been really good. I just have been slightly disappointed by Devin Jackson at times. I thought he did play better in that Penn State game than he had in a couple of those other games. There were some plays that stood out from him on the tape. But Blake Purchase, another guy who got a lot of run in that Penn State game and played more off the ball linebacker than he has all season. So, but these receivers from a group that we left them undrafted again, kind of. we'll let you take the receivers here instead of linebackers. We'll just we can make our own. We're making our own rules for this draft, but yeah, these receivers have been really impressive. We left them off of our list in August because we just didn't know. We didn't know after Evan Stewart's injury. We didn't know how things would shake out. But Gary Bryant, I think, is a guy that a lot of people forgot how good he is because he did miss most of last season. But he was really solid as the number 4 for Bo Nix a couple years ago, and then has been the number 2 receiver in this offense most of the time behind Decorian Moore, and done a really good job at it. Made that play in overtime, in double overtime, to score the touchdown. Had a couple of just like on stick routes and spacing concepts where Dante Moore would just hit him for 3-4 yards and be able to pick up first downs on short yardage situations. And then Malik Benson, I don't think people realize how much of a difference maker he's going to be for this team. We didn't see it a ton on Saturday just because they weren't really attacking things downfield as much against this Penn State team, but Malik Benson can take the top off the defense with his speed. And then we saw the playmaking ability, him going up in that Oregon State game, making a catch on the sideline, tapping his foot inbound on while he's spinning. Really impressive stuff. So I really like these receivers. And from where I was at with this group coming into the season, where we just didn't know, been really impressed by the way that these guys have handled things early on this year.
Absolutely. You happy with your selection here?
Definitely. I like this squad. I like this squad better than where I was at in the summer. But overall, it's a talented team. That's why it makes doing something like this, drafting these position groups, talking this out, it makes it fun because you got talent at every level of this team. You got depth at every one of these positions. So
yeah, these are all draftable positions. I would have been happy with any of these guys. In my team, and just to like really try to stick the landing here, it's a phenomenal, phenomenal depth that makes this team so great. I was on a podcast earlier today just talking about a soccer team and how to, even though they had won a trophy, to, maybe if they're not going to get to the championship round, it feels like a missed opportunity because, not only are you so talented at the top, but you're so talented when you face injury and when you have to play a lot of games and get in tough situations. That's where I'm with this Oregon team. This is one of the deepest Oregon teams we've ever seen, certainly in our time at Oregon. And their ability to grow in season, to learn, to understand what went wrong in games, and it's a big landing thing they talks about is learning from wins. This team learns from wins phenomenally. This is, I'm sure we can say it now. This is a team we expect to compete for a national championship. That we believe has the ability to win any game it needs to get there, and that has playmakers at every level.
Definitely. Yeah, Ducks look good right now. Number 2 team in the country for a reason.
There you go. All right, well, I think we're going to take a Saturday off this week. Ducks are on by, and so are we. We don't want to really hammer this Penn State game too hard, but it's a good spot for the Ducks to be. So we'll be back next Monday, October 6th. Welcome to October at 5 o'clock. We're going to talk about what matters with this Indiana game, why it's so important for the Ducks, how they really build on this Penn State win and get a second top 10 win in as many weeks of play for them.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. This Indiana game is shaping up to be, for a game that the two of us specifically, I feel like we really overlooked this game at the start of the season. We did talk about, Kirk Cignetti, Fernando Mendoza, but this is shaping up to look like one of the best games of the season for the Ducks. It's going to be another top 10 matchup at Austin Stadium. So really excited for that one. We're going to have a lot to get into next week on that one.
We're fired up. Well, thanks so much to everybody for coming and hanging out with us. It's been, a fantastic weekend of getting to talk about one of the best teams in the country, one of the best games, probably this season, honestly. And it's just so awesome to be able to talk about. John, thank you so much. We'll see you all next Monday.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We'll see you guys next